Have you had an encounter with Mr. or Mrs. Tall, Dark, Hairy, and Scary, and you'd like to have it narrated on this channel? Well, if so, send me an email with all the details. You can email me at contact@buckeyebigfoot.com. Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to Buckeye Bigfoot. I'm Nance. I'll be the hostess tonight, as I am every night. And I don't have a lot of preamble. How about we just get right into the 2 different emails I have for you tonight? I bet you'll like them. Dear Nance, after an unsuccessful attempt to email my 3rd story to you last night, I'm writing it in longhand and will email the pages instead. This story will be called A Bigfoot Family Mystery. This will be my last installment. After the other stories, there was a gap of a couple years. My life had changed, and I no longer came to the cabin each summer. So, this story will be surprisingly different. In the early 1990s, I took a trip with a good friend to the Canadian border area. This is usually called the Boundary Waters Canoe Area. The eastern side, near Lake Superior, changes to the Superior National Forest. My friend, Tony, and I chose to canoe into Bruley Lake after entering in at Tofty, Minnesota. We had great big green waterproof packs for supplies and clothes. It was May, and it was warm for the season. When we paddled across the lake to our chosen campsite, we beached the canoe and unloaded our gear. Anxious to get fishing, we got our lines into the water as soon as possible. After a successful few minutes, I quickly cleaned the few walleyes on the rocks, while my partner got a fire going and set out our supplies. But I'd made a big mistake. In the process of packing, I had somehow neglected to pack the fish cleaning knife, so I had to make do with a steak knife. I tossed the fish innards into the water, and the gulls grabbed them happily. The next problem was the pesky mayflies, which are hungry, large, biting gnats. They are everywhere. The next day or 2 we fished, ate our camping meals, and then hung our big food pack in the high branches to keep out the bears. One morning, we were casting away in the quiet waters when all of a sudden there was a big splash and a loud bang on the canoe. I got scared, but my friend Tony said we were probably near a beaver dam under the water nearby. It was probably warning us to go away. After that happened, Tony, unfortunately, got a fish hook caught in his finger, so we had to go to shore for some first aid. In the evenings by our campfire, we sat quietly and were maybe tired from fishing and canoeing all day. Sometimes I would sit, and I would remember fishing near my cabin, and also thought of my Bigfoot friends. I would wonder how they were, and where they were now. I wondered what Tony would say if I told him my tales of that time. Some days we explored different coves and areas to test for better fishing spots. This time we pulled ashore near sunset for a break. I looked into the trees, and I saw what appeared to be a cave, and an area that seemed like it was being used for campers, but there was no sign of any canoe dragging ashore. I thought I saw and heard movement and branches cracking. I didn't say anything because it may be a bear getting ready to go fishing and looking for bugs on the logs. We were told to just keep an eye out for them, but not to bother them if possible. In my past at the cabin, I had many experiences that no one would believe. I wonder if there could be a Bigfoot family here, too. The next day, I suggested we check out that area and stop for a break for a snack or something. Tony decided to stay by the shore in the shade to read a book. I chose to walk into the woods a bit to check out the cave I had spied the day before. If there was a Bigfoot family, they may be careful not to show themselves. Oh, there were the remains of fish bones and skin laying by the cave entrance. Bear? I heard a howl that reminded me of my Bigfoot friends at home. It didn't sound like a bear. Then I caught sight of a tan, huge animal lurking in the branches of a tree nearby. I knew there were mountain lion, moose, and elk in the area, but they didn't usually show themselves in the daytime. It jumped down and began snarling and heading in my direction. I froze for a moment before yelling at Tony to go to the canoe, and I was backing there too. But I was not prepared to see the big cat stalking me. I was very scared as I got nearer the canoe. All of a sudden, there was a huge commotion behind me. 2 animals were fighting. The cat was being attacked by a huge, dark, hairy Bigfoot. It must have been watching, and it knew that the cat was nearby. It chased the cat, tore a hole in the cat's neck and paws before tossing the whole animal against a tree trunk. The cat knew it was time to take a chance to get away. It headed for the woods again to go nurse its wounds. I doubted that it would be back there any time soon. But the big, dark Bigfoot remained standing and looking for any other concerns that he needed to address. The cat's blood dripped from his arms. He stared at me, and at the entrance to the cave there were several scared Bigfoot members standing in the shadows. He had been protecting his family and me. Why didn't he go after me? Was it possible that my Bigfoot friends from my cabin years were living here or visiting other families in the Canadian wilderness? Animals are known to have territories that could be extensive. I waved a hand at him, and I ran for the canoe. I had an experience that my friend couldn't ignore since he saw the attack. We quickly moved out to the lake in fear, anger, and surprise. We did not go back there. After that incident, Tony was very quiet and was wondering what to think of it all and my reaction to it. I chose to remain quiet until he wanted to discuss it. On the last day of our vacation, it began to rain in torrents. The temperature turned very cold, and when we started the trek back to the lake exit, we were miserable, dirty, and wet. We couldn't see where we were going. We chose to follow the shoreline around the edges, thinking we would eventually get there. We had to think we were going in the right direction, but weren't sure. In a break in the downpour, I looked over to the shore. There, in the foggy area, I saw a Bigfoot following us, and it seemed to be pointing to the direction we were going. I kept watching him until we finally saw the exit ramp. Then he waved at me, turned away, and headed back the way he came. We got back to Tofty and rented a motel to get cleaned up before starting back to Minneapolis. Tony hadn't said much after the cougar scare, but now that we were out of the area, he wanted answers. Why didn't I seem scared of the Bigfoot and wave to it as if I would to a friend? I finally decided to explain my actions, and I told him my story of the Bigfoot family in Nevis. He had a hard time soaking it all in, but realized, as I did, that it had to be between us. Signed, Darlene. Hi, Nance. I debated whether to send this to you 100 times or more. Anyone who listens on your show will probably think that I've totally lost it out here in the woods. But I need some people to know. People who still believe in things like we all did when we were kids. You know, like how kids told stories at camp. How we would say the forest was watching or listening just to scare each other. And we would tell stories about sprites and brownies and animals in the forest, not to mention ghosts of the murdered pioneers and all the crazy things kids like to tell each other. Well, I think I just ran into one of those stories. Only it's real. It started with a rock cairn that I found out back behind my cabin. I was watering the garden, which is fenced in. Behind the garden is a slope with very thick ferns that lead up to the forest of trees on a hill. I was watering, and as I was standing there, I idly looked up the slope. Then I saw something on an old tree stump just a few yards from the garden fence. There was a stack of 7 flat stones, carefully balanced on the uneven stump like a little tower. I thought it was a hiker's mark at first, like they had gotten lost and come down the hill or something. Or maybe it was some forced art from some kids that were passing through. But the stones were too smooth, too flat, and they were too deliberately chosen and so carefully placed. I've lived here long enough to know what's natural to this land, and these did not belong. I saw them, but I did not go inspect them too carefully, because I assumed that someone had just passed, or rather, trespassed through and left me a calling card, like a joke or a hey there. But the next morning, a second rock cairn had appeared, closer to the cabin this time, right by the gate of my garden, where I could not miss it. Then the day after came another third cairn. It was sitting at the base of my porch steps. Again, something I could not miss. That one stopped me cold. I didn't want to touch them, at least not at first. I just stared at them, waiting to feel something, a hint of danger, a warning maybe. But all I felt was watched. I don't mean in a sinister way. It was more like some kind of anticipation. But for many years I had ignored the feeling of being watched, putting it down to hikers on the hills down behind my property, or at least it may be the eyes of watchful animals hoping to find a way into my garden. Never once did I think it was something else. I said something out loud, very loudly, when I saw the stack of rocks. I said it very loudly as I looked up to the hill behind my garden. I think it was something stupid like, "Who are you?" And Nance, I swear to you, I think the forest heard me. At that exact moment, some kind of breeze rustled through the ferns and the trees up there on the hill, making them all shake and shudder. It was like a rustly whisper. But where I stood, there was no breeze. But I did hear the breeze going through the forest. It was unmistakable. I am not superstitious, nor have I ever been. But I swear to you, I felt the hair all over me stand up when that happened. It really felt like some kind of answer. I went right back into the house, and I stayed there most of the day. That night, I was awakened by a tapping. It was a soft but rhythmic thunk, thunk, thunk on the side of my cabin. I thought maybe some branch had come loose, though I couldn't think of how. I didn't think any trees were that close. I got up, and I went outside with the flashlight. There was nothing. No wind, no raccoons, and no nearby tree branches. All I had were the trees on the hill staring back at me. The next morning, I found a stone on my windowsill. Smooth, dark gray with a spiral scratched into the top. Very neat, very deliberate. It didn't match any symbols I knew, but it meant something. I could feel it. And then I started dreaming. And it was always the same. I dreamed of amber eyes watching me from between the trees on the hill. Huge, calm, expressive eyes. They didn't feel threatening. They felt old, wise, as if they'd been waiting for a long time for someone to look back at them. I know it all sounds crazy, but maybe I was just dreaming about it because I was thinking about it so much. I mean, this stayed on my mind for weeks. So I started experimenting by arranging the stones. Yeah, I know how that sounds, but it felt like the right thing to do. I laid them out on the stump behind the garden, where I first saw them. The next day, I carved a circle into one of my own stones, just something simple, something to represent me, and I added it to the arrangement. The day after that, it had been moved. Not just moved, but like answered. There was another stone there placed right beside it with a new symbol. 3 short lines crossing a vertical one, like a primitive tree. Or maybe it was a person of a sort. Maybe it was supposed to represent him. And I say him because I did see him. It happened several nights later. There was a strange humming one evening. It was in the background, and in the cabin I could barely notice it. But during a lull, while I was flipping through things to search for something on Netflix to watch, I became aware of it in the background. It was low and deep, like power lines humming. But it was not the power lines. Those are out front, way far away from the cabin, by the road. The humming came from the hill behind the garden. I only heard it for a few seconds after I stepped out back. Maybe 5 or 6 seconds. Then it stopped abruptly. I shined my lantern spotlight all around the yard, and that's when I saw him. He was standing at the corner of my garden fence, the one closest to the cabin. He was way taller than any man, and he was covered in a heavy, thick fur. I'm not sure of the exact color, but in my spotlight it looked black, and it was shiny. His face was very broad, and it had a solemn look to it, thin, flat lips, and those same amber eyes from my dreams. He didn't speak. As soon as he noticed that I noticed him, he crouched down and deliberately arranged 3 stones in front of me, slowly, carefully, as if he was writing. And from time to time, he would look up at me to make sure I was looking. I did not run. I did not scream. I stood there, heart pounding, as he looked at me. Then he stood up, and he walked back into the forest without a backward glance. I know how insane this all sounds, but I swear, I'm not crazy. This is how it happened. I didn't go out to look at the stones that night. I went inside, closed the door, and I debated whether or not to call the sheriff's department. But I just didn't know how to tell them. A Sasquatch was out there stacking stones for me around my property. Can you imagine how that call would go? Well, not well, I'm sure. I got out there around noon the next day. It was a good, sunny, clear day, and he was nowhere around. The stones that he had left, those symbols, I still don't know exactly what they mean, and they're not anything that's easily described, but they feel like they're words, a message. I just don't know what that is. I've done extensive searches online, and I have nothing that comes close. I tried responding on my own with universal symbols for words like peace, forest, and the like etched into rocks. I put them opposite of his rocks, but I must have done something wrong. He took all the rocks one night, and no more stones appeared stacked. I haven't seen him since. There are times that I do leave food, and I'm certain he is the one who takes it. I leave the paper plates out there covered with foil where the ferns grow. If it was another animal taking it, I would find probably the paper plate and the aluminum foil, or at least scattered food. But the area is always immaculately clean. One time, I found the paper plate out there on the stump. It was perfectly clean, as if it had been licked clean. On top of the paper plate were 3 black feathers fanned out. They were held in place by a plain, unetched stone. That was the very last thing that I've gotten from him. He took back all the stones he could find that were his that he had etched. Maybe it takes a long time to make them. I don't expect you to believe all of this. Heck, if anyone told me this same story, I'd think they needed a long nap in a white coat with some really good medications. But I needed to tell someone who might remember the old stories from being a kid, someone who won't laugh. All of those things happened in 2023. I still look for messages. I have left other stones with symbols, but nothing has ever been returned. I wonder if he's left the area. Did I offend him? I don't know, but I think I did something wrong. I have not been brave enough to go up on the hills to look for him. Anyway, I don't think he would like to be found. Anyway, thank you for listening if you've made it this far. I have no idea what any of this means or meant, but I am certain he was trying to communicate with me somehow. But I failed. But what did it mean? I have no idea. Do you? Thank you. Signed, Myra. Wow, well, those were some really good stories tonight. Now listen, the first story about Darlene. If you missed Darlene's other stories, I'll put a link to them in the description below. All right, my Sasquatch. Well, I think that's going to be it for tonight. Though this weekend, I will have a very small announcement for you. Well, it's not so small to me. Anyway, I think a few of you are going to be happy about it. So just tune in Friday night, and I'll give you all the deets, as they say. Otherwise, until then, please always remember, absence of proof is not proof of absence. Thanks for listening.